Hello and welcome to episode 21 of The Australian Runner, a weekly show about running and everything running related. I'm Ben and with me is Chris.
Hello everyone.
This week's show is about Nike's amazing marathon effort called Breaking2. Let's get started. Nike's attempt to break the 2-hour marathon, which they called Breaking2, happened on the weekend, and they came so close to actually doing it.
Yeah, it was such an amazing run by Eluid Kipchoge. He just came so close to that magical barrier.
Yeah, just 25 seconds off. Absolutely incredible. And we've been hearing about this for months. They've been building it up with so much hype with their shoes and teasing us and all videos online to try and get everyone excited. And they definitely got me excited for seeing how this race was going to go.
Yeah, I watched a fair bit of the race. It was quite interesting, the setup that they had. But all the practice and preparation that they had to try and run that fastest ever marathon ended up working.
So we can jump straight into the results. So there were 3 runners running. There was Tadisi, Desisa and Kipchoge. Desisa fell off the pack first, just after the 15-kilometre mark, and he ended up finishing in a time of 2 hours and 14 minutes. Next was Tadisi, who fell off just after the halfway mark, or just before, at 59 minutes and 49 seconds. So yeah, slightly under halfway.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up running his marathon PB in 2 hours and 6 minutes and 51 seconds. But it was all about Eluid Kipchoge, who managed to hold on to the pace really almost the entire way, and it ended up with 2 hours and just 25 seconds over that magical 2-hour marathon time.
Yeah, surpassing what everyone predicted pre-race. No one thought he'd go that close. They thought he'd maybe take a minute, maybe absolute max 2 minutes, and still be around the 201, 202 mark. But no, very close to breaking 2, and Nike has to get a lot of credit for that. So one of the things that helped make that world record possible was how evenly paced all the 5k splits were. They were aiming for, I think, 14:13 for every 5k, and the fastest was 14:07, so 6 seconds quicker than it needed to be. And the slowest was 14:27 for the last 5k, or between 35 to 40. 14:27, and that was just 14 seconds more than what was required. So there was a difference of 20 seconds either side of the mark required, and a lot of them were between 14:14 and 14:17, which is 3 seconds for a 5k, which is just not unnoticeable.
Yeah, and if you just take away that final 5-kilometre split, which is where he lost most of his time, you can see if you take that one away, the slowest is 14:17, which is just 4 seconds slower than where it needed to be.
Yeah, so he was doing really well until the 35k mark, running at the 2:51 pace per kilometre, and he just slightly died towards the last, say, 7 kilometres of the race. But compared with the other 2, he absolutely killed it.
So Nike helped achieve this in a couple of different ways, and one of the ways that they were most excited about was with their new Vaporfly shoes, which they used all these different high-tech elements, and they've analysed all different parts of the biomechanics, and they've got carbon fibre and different foam and everything to try and get about a 4% improvement in running efficiency.
Yeah, so one of the main reasons to do this campaign is as a marketing ploy around selling these shoes. And the results show that, yes, Kipchoge ran just over 2 hours, but the other 2 faded quite prominently, and it wouldn't have helped them that much. So it's tough to gather whether the shoes actually did help and whether they did actually get that 4 to 7% improvement. Other results have shown that it's been actually all over the shop, and some athletes haven't received any benefit, but then others like Kipchoge must have received some sort of benefit to be able to run that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, Tadisi did run a personal best, so there's that as well. But a 4% improvement, you'd be looking for a more obvious result. If they just say, all right, you're going to be 4% faster over 2 hours, you're looking at like very noticeable up around like 8 minutes faster.
Yeah, and they didn't get that. So I'm not 100% sure how much the shoe helped, but it definitely would have helped Kipchoge. I think you can say that.
And it's definitely a shoe that they've put a lot of time and effort and money into to make it as best as they can.
Yeah. One of the other things that they did was they made the athletes consume a lot more carbohydrates during the race, so they always had a lot of energy. They upped it some incredible amount from what they had already or were usually consuming. And that was to ensure that they didn't hit the wall at the 30-35k mark, that they could push through and run the whole way through the marathon at the same pace.
Again, obviously this didn't work too well for anyone except Kipchoge, as both Tadisi and Desisa fell off before the halfway mark, with Desisa struggling from about the 15-kilometre mark. So I'm not sure how well that worked across the board.
One of the things that we've talked about, how their results are completely different, but they also have to do with that pacing strategy. We talked about it, how even it was and how little variation there was, but that was all designed around running 2 hours for the marathon. And for Tadisi and Desisa, that pace was just too fast for them. And so the major reason why they fell away to run 7 and 14 minutes slower is because they just blew up. It wasn't even to do with hitting a wall or anything. They were just too far above what they could sustain for the 2 hours, so they blew up. With proper pacing, more evenly matched with their running ability, they could have both run faster. I would have said 3 to 4 minutes at least if they'd paced correctly. So Tadisi, if he'd started running 2:03 pace, he might have been able to hold that the whole way. And the fact that he blew up meant he went 3 minutes slower. And the same with Desisa. No way off proper pacing he'd run 2:14. I reckon sub 2:10 is definitely on the cards.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting point that you bring up. They definitely weren't trying to run the fastest they could. They were trying to break 2 hours. So I guess if 2 hours and 6 minutes didn't cut it, they were trying to run them faster than that. So yeah, they definitely blew up, as you said. That's an interesting point. They could definitely run faster, and maybe that's another reason why we haven't seen some of the positive effects of this shoe, just because they're trying to push the athletes too hard. If they were trying to run about that, 2:03 pace, as you said, maybe they would have gotten it and we would have said, wow, these shoes are amazing. But what we've seen is the positive effects of the shoes sort of being negated by the pacing maybe being a little bit too fast. Another way that Nike really pushed to try and get them across it was they did months and months of testing and training and dieting, and basically they've got their entire sports science division working with these athletes to try and make them run as fast as they possibly could, which is something that you don't really see too often because you don't have a company as big as Nike focusing on just 3 runners. Yep. Usually you just have your coach, maybe you've got some government backing through an institute of sport or similar, but you never have a company so big putting in so much effort. And that's because it was a marketing campaign. They wanted to end up selling lots of shoes and increasing their brand image, and that's why they've done it. But it's really helped them to just formulate a race plan and try and peak at the right time. And you said how they had so much more carbohydrates as they were running, and that's obviously something that they've put a lot of research into, something that we wouldn't really see otherwise.
And the testing also occurred when they tried to find 3 athletes to attempt the record. They started off with, I think, 60 athletes, and they whittled it down through testing and stuff to just the 3 final athletes that we got. So they used testing to try and find the best athletes that were most likely to do the job. So one of the other things they did was they had paces used for the whole time, the whole 2 hours, and they ran in a V formation. And one of the funny things about this was that the paces were subbing in and out every couple of laps. And so that it wasn't the same paces the whole time. I think they had 3 or 4 sets that would run for 5 or so kilometres, then drop out, have a break. And I think they had 3 stints each or something like that.
Yeah, so they were running in that V formation to try and block as much of the wind and give an aerodynamic advantage to the runners, who were obviously staying in the middle. How much this actually helped, it's hard to say. The benefits of getting the wind blocked decrease with how much slower you're going. So if you look at a sport like NASCAR, they're all about drafting behind the car in front, and that gives them an enormous advantage. You look at another sport like cycling, they're going slower, but they're still going at 40 kilometers an hour. They certainly get an advantage. But the slower and slower you go, and I think they're running at about 20 kilometers an hour, just over, the advantage isn't really there too much. I'm sure there'd be a small advantage, but how much that actually really helps them, I'm not too sure.
Well, I saw somebody somewhere on the internet wrote that they thought that advantage just by those people pacing was about 1 second per kilometre. So over a marathon distance, it would save him about 42 seconds, which is a reasonable chunk, but 1 second per kilometre doesn't sound like much at all. Just adds up because you're running that far.
And the final and most obvious advantage that Nike gave was the car that was driving in front of them.
Yeah, the Tesla.
Yeah, the Tesla. And this was supposedly for pacing, so it would drive at the exact pace and then shoot a laser out the back, and they gave them a little box to run in, so they would know if they were running too fast or too slow, that sort of thing. But the Tesla had a gigantic white box on the top of it, which provided huge wind blocking.
It had the time on it. That's what they claimed it was for, but it was definitely wind blocking.
Yeah, it's gigantic. Absolutely ridiculous, I think. You don't need a clock that big to tell people how fast they're going. Yeah. Just even a little clock on the rear boot or something like that. They've stuck this, I don't know how many, maybe 1.5 meters high on top of the car.
Easily.
They try and play it down by saying, oh no, the runners are running far enough behind. But I just said how I don't think running behind other runners gives you too much of an advantage. But having a gigantic car breaking the wind in front of you, that is, I think, where a lot of the benefits have come from.
Yeah. So somebody's put a figure on it, and they thought it was about 2 seconds per kilometre, double what the running paces were giving the athlete. But overall, with the paces in the car, that's a saving of 3 seconds per kilometre, which adds up to about 2 minutes that Eluid Kipchoge saved just by doing all that correct stuff.
And then if you can add in another couple of minutes, maybe another 2 minutes for the shoes and a little bit more for their race plan with, as you said, having more carbohydrates through, I guess it's working in conjunction with everything else. So trying to get those incremental benefits to try and push it below 2, and I guess it wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, but a couple of the reasons why everyone said this is the fastest marathon ever, but it's an unofficial world record, is because of that car, because it was providing wind assistance and slipstream for the athletes, which was illegal. The fact that the pacers subbed in and out of the race. To qualify for a world record, your pacers can start, but then they drop off and nobody else can jump back in. And the other one is their drinks were handed to them, which is illegal. In races, you have to pick them off a table, which could slow you down.
Yeah, so Nike obviously knew all this and they weren't going for a record. They just wanted someone to say, look, we ran 1 hour, 59 minutes, 59 seconds, and that's all they really wanted.
And for the general public, they'll just see that and won't realise it's not an official world record.
Yeah, that's true.
So it could work and should have worked pretty well. It still will with somebody running just over 2 hours.
So now, do you think that the 2-hour marathon is attainable?
I do, but I still think, legitimately, world record is about, 20 years away. The first step we have to do is we need Eluid Kipchoge in October to go to Berlin and run and see if he can break the 2 hours, 2 minutes, 57 world record set by Dennis Comito a couple of years ago. I think, legitimately, with that performance, he can run 2 hours 2 maybe. And so if you're already down that, and it's then how long can you take those next 2 minutes away? Kipchoge's been such a phenomenal athlete. People are saying he's the greatest marathoner ever. And we're just waiting for that next wave, that next generation of young runners to come through and try and better his achievements.
Yeah, I agree with that. The first step is definitely to break the official world record. I saw there was a paper that was been going around that was saying somebody put a figure on how fast they think it's actually possible for a human to run a marathon. And they said it was 1:57.58. And the closer you get to that figure, the harder and harder it is.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I think that we won't see many people ever running the 2-hour marathon. I think people will be getting closer and closer to 2 hours, maybe hit 2:01, which is about 3.5 minutes behind this theoretical limit. And we don't know if that theoretical limit is 100% sure. You can't really be certain with anyone. You can get some absolute freak coming along with, some gene that's usually switched off in a regular person that they just happen to have switched on, that sort of thing. But I really don't see sub 2-hour marathons, really that record being broken in any time soon in an official setting.
In an official capacity, yeah. It's still a long way away.
And that wraps up the first half of the show about Nike's amazing effort. They eventually didn't get there, but it was very exciting to see them get so close. So now I'll pass it over to Chris for the week's news.
Just a couple of news items for the week. Athletics is back with the Northern Hemisphere track season underway over the weekend. But first to Sydney. They had the Sydney 10 over the weekend. And the women's results are that Alex Patterson took the win in 33.28. Marnie Ponton second in 33.33. And Danielle Allen in 33.58. In the men's side of the equation, Tim Lefroy won in 30 hours 10. Matt Hudson was second in just 3 seconds behind, 30.13. And in third place was Tom DeCanto in 30.30. So quite quick running from both sides. It was a good race. Now to America, and the Peyton Jordan Invitational was held over the weekend. Patrick Tiernan ran a magnificent time over the 10K in 27.29, just a couple of seconds outside the Australian record, which is Benson Lawrence. Madeline Hills also ran exceedingly well in her 10K event. And then to the shorter event, Sam McEntee was second in the 5K in 13:17, and that performance moves him to 8th on the Australian all-time list. And in the second heat, young runner Jack Rayner ran a personal best 13:47 to win and beat the Olympic 1500 metre champion Matthew Centrovitz. Over to Doha for the first meet of the Diamond League. Ryan Gregson qualified for London with a run of 3:34.56 to place 7th. And Jen Lacar's also qualified for the 3K steeplechase with her season's best of 9:37. To the last news item, which was the Wings for Life World Run, which was held on Sunday all over the globe. It's an interesting event where all the runners take off, and then 30 minutes later a car takes off and it tries to catch you, and you've got to see how far you could run. The overall winner was a bloke in a wheelchair in Dubai. He managed to get 94 kilometres away. The first male runner was 88 kilometres he covered, and the first female was 68 kilometres. And it was held in Melbourne in Australia, as well as myriad of other places overseas. There was one place in a lot of different countries. I think there was 2 in America though, but a lot centred around Europe. And it was sponsored by Red Bull for spinal cord research. So very interesting event, highly unusual, but good nonetheless. And that wraps up news for this week.
Thanks for that, Chris. And that's it for the show. Thank you everyone for listening. You can find us on iTunes and YouTube as The Australian Runner. And check us out on Facebook and Instagram too, or head to theaustralianrunner.com. See you next week.
See you then.